Hair's looking great.
Thank you. Yeah, I did it yesterday for you.
I did one this morning.
Perfect.
Yeah, fresh shave. What do you use? Do you wet shave? Do you use a sort of a machine?
To be honest, I'd use pretty much every method going. It depends how I feel. Most of the time, I just do it with There's a clipper called the wall aqua blade that gets really close.
Mm,
And I just do it like that every sort of 4 or 5 days. Probably that's the majority of the time. But I'm doing so many videos and things to do with this stuff. I switch. I've got so many different razors and
yeah,
shavers. I switch it up all the time, to be honest. Yeah, but most of the time, yeah, I just go with the clippers. That's good enough for me at the minute. But
nice.
I did a video yesterday, so that's hence why we're looking a bit fresher today, a bit
Looking,
fresher.
looking fresh, yeah, and
How about
the tash goes with it well as well.
Yes, the tash is the cherry on top, so to speak. I try and keep that top tier as I can.
Definitely, yeah. I always think, I mean, that was going to be one of my questions about like facial hair and stuff and how that can positively affect guys like us and their, confidence and self-esteem when it comes to this sort of thing. Thanks for coming on and having a chat with me. I think it's really cool. I saw you from Steve Hall's podcast,
Okay, yeah,
and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I've never seen anything like this before, and I think it's such a unique niche,
yeah,
and something which is like obviously means a lot to me and so many other guys out there as well. So I thought that would be cool to have a chat with him and see what he's about and
yeah,
kind of guys he works with and stuff. So yeah, what do you know? Social media works.
yeah. No, glad you reached out, man. Listen, I'm always up for this conversation. Always happy to talk about it, my experience, what I do. I think it's an important conversation to be having. So yeah, thanks for having me, man. Real
No,
pleasure.
it definitely is. I mean, I guess my first question is like, can you kind of sort of introduce yourself a bit more about who you help and what you do, that sort of thing?
Sure, yeah. So obviously, my name's Harry from south of England, and I started the BaldCafé YouTube channel. That was how it really started. Was 8 years ago now, and I really started that to share initially my experience with losing my hair. I was dabbling in YouTube before that, different niches, just bit for fun, bit for to try and get some traction, and then really just by chance, I mentioned my hair loss story in one of those videos, right? It was kind of like relevant at the time. And it was the first time I'd really made a video or spoken on camera about something that I kind of really felt passionate about, and it wasn't a challenge. It was nothing I had to research. It really felt good to talk about it. So I shared that on a different channel, and it just instantly got a lot of traction, from people online. And I thought, okay, there's something here. Like I need to go more into this. And then I started this separate YouTube channel, which is now BaldCafé. And like I said, just sharing my own story. And that really just escalated then into about 6 months in, other guys, having seen my content and then saying, hey, I want to share my story too. And then it became just like this giant community of at its core, guys sharing that moment when they kind of transition from balding and insecure and afraid to, you know what, I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to kind of define my own narrative around hair loss, and I'm going to embrace it and move on. Um, and I've never looked back, to be honest. From that first time I put down my story, I've never looked back. And like I said, that was 8 years ago, and now that's obviously grown into me helping guys one on one, kind of navigate that journey. But I not only navigate that journey because it really doesn't stop there. I say now that the hair loss part of a man's journey is kind of like an entry wound to a much bigger transformation on all levels, and in many ways, myself included. Maybe you're the same. I look back and I think, you know what, if I'd never had that struggle or whatever, because it really was a struggle for me, I never really would have thought about, you know, my identity or my self confidence, my self worth, all of these things that after taking on that challenge, I've then applied that same thing into other areas of my life, and I think grown far beyond what I ever would have if I hadn't been faced with it. So, yeah, it's been amazing, man. It's been amazing.
Yeah, that's wicked. Yeah, it's really cool. It's something that I think a lot of guys struggle to talk about, isn't it? I mean, I certainly did for a long time. And you mentioned there like about your own struggle. So like, how did it affect you? Like, when did you, I don't know, how did it all come about? Like, when did you start to experience it? How did you feel? How did you then go from that struggle to then almost embracing it?
Sure. Yeah. So, I was living in China at the time. I'd left the UK. I'd been living in China for 2 and a bit years. And like I said, life was going really well. I was on a bit of an adventure. I was growing in many ways. Maybe this was also part of trying to find my own sort of self-confidence. And I think back then, I've reflected on this a lot recently. I wasn't really that much of a confident lad. I'd been quite overweight growing up, and I didn't get into the gym until quite later. And even then, a lot of my gym was getting quite big. I mean, I know it has been for a long time, but I think, now it's massive. But even when I was a kid, well, we're going back almost 18 years, right? When I was like 15, 16, a lot of my friends started getting into the gym, getting bigger, stronger. And I sort of lagged behind in many, many ways, right? Many ways. And I think that did really impact my self-confidence. And when I moved away and I had this sort of, pretty boy appearance and stuff, I started getting a lot of attention from women and from just people in general. And I think I really then attributed that to a feeling of confidence, but it wasn't true sort of self-confidence as I describe it. And so then, after doing that for 2.5 years, feeling good, to then be faced with hair loss and that image that I based a lot of my self-confidence on was now literally disappearing in front of me. It just completely shattered my everything, to be honest. I was so terrified because, I felt like for the first time I felt quite good about myself, and now this was going to be ripped away from me. But I was faced with the crossroads then of, okay, do I try to really hold on to this appearance and this feeling of self-worth that I've developed, or is this actually an opportunity? It was like, how do I describe this? Clearly, there was work to be done, because if I was truly confident in myself, I really don't think hair loss would have had the impact that it had on me. And you asked there about how did it affect me. I mean, the initial phases is like, obviously you're bargaining for it to not be true, and I'm constantly checking, and I'm rewatching videos, and I'm filming the top of my head, and I'm looking at these pictures, and I'm thinking, isn't it? Like, and in the end, there was no denying it. It really was happening. And then it was a bit of a scramble to kind of keep it a secret. I was like, I can't have people know about this, because then their image of me will change, and they'll think I'm old, I'm ugly, I'm this, I'm that. And these thoughts just kept going round and round and round in my head, and it led me to really trying to hide it. Now, I didn't get involved in the hair powders and the hats and things, but my way of hiding it grew to literally, I've talked about this a lot, but sitting at the back of my university classroom with my sort of head against the wall, never wanted anyone to be behind me. I'd walk down the road with my head sort of tilted slightly towards the ground, so that the top of my head was like, as high as it could be, so people couldn't see, because my hair was thinning at the back, right at the crown to start with, so they could see that. I'd always be playing around with it. I didn't like my pictures being taken. All of this just weighs on you, and it just stays on your mind, and it just became such a burden, and it just sucked my energy and my concentration away from, all of these amazing things that I was doing previously, like the studying, like interacting with people, trying to learn a new language, trying to start different businesses. All of this stuff that I was doing really took a back seat. And eventually that burden just became too much, and I was like, what has happened to me? And that was about a year, until I reached my rock bottom with it, when I finally was like, I can't live my life like this,
It's tough, isn't it? And again, I think guys who don't experience hair loss have no idea how destructive it can be for guys like us and our confidence and self-esteem and just general adult life. I don't know how old you were, but I must have been honestly about 16, 17 when I first noticed it. And it was like when I used to ride my ped, I used to take my helmet off and see this hair. And like, I was like you, going through this years of in denial, thinking, oh, it's just normal, I used to do my hair a lot, and I used to spend so much time doing my hair because I used to love it. I used to get a lot of attention like you at school, 16, 17, sixth form. And then it started to become more noticeable. And it's like, shit, is this actually happening to me at 17 years old, And yeah, from then it's just like years and years of in denial. Of just thinking, it's not happening. It's not happening. And like yourself, trying to do your hair so it covers up certain things and cutting it different ways. It's it's horrible, isn't it? What sort of age were you then when it all sort of
I was
began to happen?
25. Yeah, I was
Okay.
25, and it happened so fast. I think I must have been losing a significant amount before I actually noticed. And a lot of people do say that, right? Because obviously you have to lose a lot of hair before you really, really notice. But I sort of, when I finally saw it, and then I connected the dots, and I thought, yeah, no, there was a lot of hair. I had this like wet room in China. It's like the bathroom, right? It's like a wet room, and I'd blow dry my hair in there because it used to be quite long, and it would all be on the walls. And I just thought, oh, it must just be because it's long, And then I thought, actually, no. Now that I think about it, there was a lot of hair on the wall, and also there was no heating in this city where I lived, but they had hot lamps like in the ceiling in the bathroom. And I remember for the last maybe like year or 6 months thinking like that is way hotter than it used to be. And it's because the hair on top was getting so thin, there was no sort of barrier between the hot lamp and my scalp, right? So
Yeah.
it all sort of came together, and I was like, yeah, there's no denying this. And I just think it was, I don't know what you think about this, but I think the scariest part is one, the uncertainty, because you know that your appearance is going to change, and you've had everything you've known up to that point has been with this outer appearance, right, that you've grown comfortable with. All the successes you've had, however you define that, whether it's with girls, with jobs, with just the outside world, has all been a result of this image. And if you feel satisfied with where you kind of are in life at that point, the last thing you want is now to be faced with a drastic change in your appearance, which, yeah, hair loss can take a long time, but that's not what you're thinking when it's going out. You literally think, right, this is, in a few years, I'm going to look like my dad or whatever for a long time. And I literally remember sat in this chair and I was like, having this almost like, what's that character in Lord of the Rings where he's got like two voices going on all the time? Gollum, right? Yeah.
Mate. Oh, mate, don't.
And it was like these two voices going back and forth. Like, I don't want to look like my dad. And then I was like, but at the same time, I've never thought my dad looks bad, and he's, doing all right in this world. So, but I'm 25, and it was just back and forth, these different kind of dialogues I had going on.
Yeah. It's nasty. Yeah, and my confidence, like, it massively plummeted. I think it does for most guys, right? And it's like it's insane how much it can affect how you feel about yourself. And it's taken years and years of just like accepting who you are now and accepting what you like to sort of gradually build it back up again.
Yeah.
So was when you finally decided to sort of, I don't know, take the plunge and shave your head, did that dramatically change how you felt, or did it take a while? I mean, what was how did it go with you?
So I think the thing that changed in my head was the narrative I was looking at, the kind of path I had laid ahead, and I realized that a lot of how I viewed myself is in my control. It's like the hair loss wasn't in my control. That was happening, and there was nothing I could do to change that, right? That was the reality. But how I thought about myself as a man that was losing his hair or had lost his hair, whatever, that was in my control, right? And I think for the year of struggle and insecurity, I looked at losing your hair loss, as, I was a victim to it, right? And I felt like that meant I would be an ugly person, on the outside and on the inside. And it did make me an ugly person, because that insecurity is an ugly trait to have. That's, unfortunately, that was kind of largely felt out of my control, but that's the reality of where I was at. I didn't believe in myself. I'd lost all that confidence in myself. And it's that, again, like you said, to people who aren't experiencing this, it sounds mad to say that.
Yeah.
that was where I was at. And you know, and I connected losing your hair with all these things, looking old, you know, looking old, not just looking older. Like I really thought I was going to look 60 at like 26, and I thought that's such an awful thing. And I thought about, and again, this, I'm careful with what I say here, but I felt like I was going to suddenly turn into this person that was like hideously overweight, unwanted, unattractive, you know, forever single, given up. And again, that sounds mad, but these are the images that I had in my head. And somewhere along the line, I think maybe I just, you know, there was a few people talking about it on YouTube and things, and I thought, but that isn't a guarantee. You know, that isn't just what happens just because you go bald. And I thought, how I handle this moving forward is in my control, right? And I thought, you know, just making the decision to not hide this anymore, because that's what I was doing, right? And that was what was making me more insecure, anxious, all of that, hiding away. You know, I was like, I have the choice to actually present this. You know, yeah, I've lost my hair. Like, it is what it, you know, and just being confident enough to do that and to show that, I sort of recognized I would need to be confident to do that. So in literally doing that, I'm not kind of deluding myself into thinking, oh yeah, I am confident. Like, I'm directly showing myself that I have the confidence to do that, you know, because not just one, it's not a case of like, oh, not everyone could do that. It's like the previous me couldn't do that. The previous me who was unconfident was terrified to do that. So then I was like, in now showing this unapologetically, you know, to the world, to myself, to the people around me, that requires confidence. And I want that, you know, and so the narrative switched in my head, and I was like, no, I want to take this on, and I want to be able to handle this. You know, all the stuff I'm hiding from, I want to show myself that I can handle it. And that was the thing that drew me to them eventually buzzing my hair off, you know, and then people would ask me, why have you done that? And being able to literally say to them, I was losing my hair, I was desperately insecure, I was terrified of it, and I didn't want to live the rest of my life like that, or the next 5-10 years, whatever. I didn't want to run from that. I didn't want to hide from that any longer. So this is what I've done, and this is me now, right? And I was comfortable to share that, and that just it changed everything. That was the thing that changed everything for me, you know. But it wasn't just the simple head shave; it was the narrative that I was taking on. And like I said, that then had so much crossover into other areas of my life, taking chances, taking leaps, as I call it, you know, betting on myself rather than thinking I can't do this. I was like, you know what, I'm going to try, and I'm going to show myself that I can do it. And I think that was one of the biggest gifts, you know, even putting myself out there on YouTube, starting the channel, eventually going all in on that as a career, you know, all of those things took leaps that I kind of attribute to that first one, which was shaving my head and no longer, or changing that narrative, right, and no longer hiding from it. So it wasn't necessarily an overnight thing. That narrative, you know, took time to kind of build up the courage to really do it and take that chance. But I will say, the minute I did actually shave my head and walk out into the world, and I didn't feel like I needed to, you know, ruffle up the hair around the crown, or walk with my head down, or all of that stuff that I described earlier, my goodness me, like the weight off my shoulders in that moment, and the buzz I got from it, like truly, you know, I was like, wow, I've actually done this, because I'd spent a year of my life as a 25-year-old man being terrified of that very thing. And then I just did it, and I was like, wow, this is eye-opening, to say the least, you know.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's that acceptance, isn't it? It's the acceptance that, yeah, like you said, I'm losing my hair, I'm going bald, I'm going to just embrace it, I'm going to deal with it, this is who I am now. I think a lot of it is as well like thinking what other people are thinking of you as well. I don't know if you when you notice this, when people start to notice your hair and they start looking, it's like, oh god, they've noticed, oh my god, and it's just the worst feeling. And going through all that and just accepting it and just shaving it all off, it's almost like a massive weight off your shoulders, and just thinking like, yeah, this is it now, this is who I am.
Yeah, it's a defining moment, you know. for me, it's a line in the sand through that insecurity. You know, it's like, as I said earlier, it's you making the decision to no longer be afraid and insecure and embarrassed about the realities that you've got going on, you know. And at the end of the day, like, the shaved head is just it's a haircut at the end of the day, you know. And so I really think the psychological kind of impact of it, the power of it, is underrated. It's why I talk about that side of things so much, you know. The physical is one thing, you know. Of course, it's a relief to shave your head and look at yourself in the mirror and be like, actually, I can handle this. This looks, you know, or I kind of like this. You know, it is a buzz. It does. You do feel very masculine, you know, in a sense, especially compared to hiding it away. You know, I mean, there's nothing worse than that. Living your life thinking you need to hide yourself, and that just that insecurity just oozes out of you and into so many more areas. You know, like you playing around with the fringe, putting the hat on, like all of these things that we do to just hide. It kind of transfers into all these other areas, and that's why I feel so passionate about the other side, right? The opposite, where you're just like, this is me, like you said, right? I can confidently rock this. I can have you know that I'm a balding man. I can display my baldness with pride. The same, that confidence oozes into other things that you do, you know, and that's why I think it's such a powerful move for a guy to take, you know, who's losing his hair.
Yeah, definitely. And you help a lot of guys going through that sort of situation. So is a lot of your work, is it mostly about that sort of mindset shift about the hair loss, or is it a lot of it comes into getting into good shape as well? Is it a bit of both? Is it more of one, less of the other?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. You know, I think the mindset shift is huge. That kind of comes through taking actions, right? One of the biggest things for guys is breaking what I call that anxiety cycle. That's the first thing you do, right? You have to stop the hiding, which is keeping that anxiety cycle going round, right? So it's like, you know, those thoughts we said earlier. You have that thought, right? What if people notice? Right? I'm going to watch the result. I'll be embarrassed. Right? Then you feel a certain way. You're like, well, I don't want to feel that way. So you hide it. Right? And in hiding it, you don't allow yourself the perspective to challenge that thought that has caused you to hide it. So the loop just goes round and round and round. And that's how guys stay stuck forever. You know, that was why I was stuck for a year. That's how guys get stuck for 10, 20 years, right? Hiding it in some kind of way. That's what also leads guys to doing other methods of hiding baldness, you know, through surgeries and things like this. But the minute you can break that anxiety loop by leaving the hat off, you know, literally shaving your head and having that conversation, like, yeah, I've shaved it because I've been losing my hair. Excuse me, I'm going to cough.
Sorry.
That is the thing that you need to do to break that anxiety cycle, you know, and that is the big, like, whoa, the big wake up, the big aha moment for guys when they're like, oh, this isn't going to ruin my life. And then, like I said, that then transfers into other things. It could be two ways. You mentioned the fitness there. Sometimes that is the first bit of self-belief that a guy needs after years of hiding. And then they're like, okay, I've done this. What else can I do? And they're like, you know what? I've been wanting to lose 20, 30 pounds of body fat for the last 5 years. I've done this. I know I can do that now. And then they start with their fitness journey. For other guys, it might happen the other way around, where they start making traction and focusing on other positive things like a fitness journey, right? Which is I say it's the foundation to everything, foundation to other self-confidence levels and things. And that's what gives them that self-belief and that little boost of confidence in themselves, because they've gone from a guy who's like, I want to do this, but I'm not, you know, and then that all goes backwards to, I've wanted to do this and I am doing it, you know, which kind of gets the momentum moving forwards. They see the changes there and they're like, okay, right, this is no longer holding me back. The hair's holding me back way too much. Let's get rid of it, you know, and then, yeah, once the fitness starts, you know, I call it bald maxing, right? Maybe, I don't know if you see like this, but the fitness is up, you know, the confidence is up. They're no longer having this ball and chain of the hair loss insecurity. And then they finally have this self-belief where they're like, okay, I can actually do way more than I thought I could previously, right? And so they're getting in the best shape of their lives, no longer hiding the hair loss. They transfer that into career, relationships, adventure. And yeah, that's what I do. A lot of that then. The sky's the limit at that point, and there's nothing better. There's nothing better than seeing guys reach their potential, or strive to just continuously, hit higher and higher levels of success, however they define that, especially when they've lived a period of their life, insecure, no self-belief, no self-worth, hiding themselves away, and to see that change. I mean, that's why I do what I do, literally. That's why I'm still going after all this time. It's how I live my own life. It's why I'm very happy to have this conversation with you, because nothing fires me up more than that, truly.
Yeah, for sure. It's awesome, isn't it? Like, and hopefully it'll help a lot of guys who are going through very similar situations. I think for me, that was like, because I was quite a skinny guy, a kid, 17, 18-year-old. So I went through the whole sort of fitness stage first. I was in denial about my hair. I kept, I was getting comments and stuff. So I thought, right, I'll go to the gym. I'll start trying to lift some weights, get a bit bigger. And then that sort of transferred over to, fuck it. You know what? I'm just gonna do it. And then I realized I could grow a beard. And that was the next thing for me. It was like, I can grow a beard. I'm going to shave my head. And it actually looks pretty good. And then from there, it just carries on to more things, doesn't it? Like you say, like you continue with the training, you continue with other things, you go off traveling and you experience more stuff. So it just creates this sort of massive snowball effect, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And to the point where you look back and you're like, wow, I can't believe I was stuck with that for so long. Yeah. Just the difficult part is you can't see it. You can't know that until you take those leaps into the unknown. And that's the hard bit, right? That's the bit where guys get stuck, especially if they're stuck in that anxiety loop, like I said, where they're literally robbing themselves of the opportunity to really see that potential.
What's the one of the most common low points you hear from men when they realize they're losing their hair, and what impact do you think it makes on their sort of like their dating, their work, and then just generally look in the mirror?
Yeah, when you say low points, do you mean like a specific event or how they describe it?
I guess how they describe it, just a general sort of, phase in their life of just feeling just generally low and low confidence.
Yeah, I mean, some of the standout things when I have conversations with these guys is literally like, they literally will say like, I want my life back. I want my life back from this. This is just completely consuming me. It's consuming all my energy. Things with dating, it can range from small things like they go on dates, and one guy was telling me the other day, he's like, I would always have to make, he's like, it's gentlemanly anyway, but I could never go in front of the woman, whether that's walking or down the stairs or something, because I'd be so afraid she'd like see the back of my head, right? Talking about dating. It can range from that to obviously like, what's the point in even trying to go on a date? Because what do I do? Like, is she going to notice? I'm going to be sat there constantly thinking if she's going to notice, or do I wear the hat? And then if we get to like the second, third date, she's like, do you ever take the hat off? It's like all these unanswered questions that they would just rather not face. They just don't want to have to go through that. And it's stopping them living their lives, right? And this is the point. I get messages from guys like, Harry, is it time? Is it time for me to shave it off and move on, right? And they'll say, can I send you a picture so you can tell me if it's time or not? And I said, absolutely, you can send me a picture, but that isn't what defines if it's time or not, And so I have to get into a conversation with them, and I say, you need to tell me how this is impacting. Right? Obviously, you've got to the point where you're DMing me, that one, that's obviously significant, but two, how is this really impacting your life? And if it's stopping you doing anything really, then it's a serious consideration that you need to at least make a change. You need to face this, because like I said, we talked about dating, but I mean, I've heard it all, man. At this point, I've heard it all. Guys having scholarship opportunities to play professional soccer. This guy was in Australia, so he said soccer, right? Football, and saying no because he was like, I can't even train properly because I'm just thinking about my hair. And it's like, that's a life-changing decision that is being impacted by insecurity, you know, by being insecure about the hair loss. Job interviews, you know, not going for job interviews because they don't want to face being on camera or something for a Zoom interview, because they're afraid of the perception around how their hair's looking, or applying for jobs that only require you to wear a hat. You know, we're talking about like highly educated people being like, okay, I'm going to get a job in a like a department store or whatever, that the uniform is wearing hats because I can do that because I need to wear my hat. And it's like making massive life decisions. The insecurity is and that anxiety cycle is making these life decisions for these guys, you know. And that's just a few of them. And those are the big standout things in these conversations that I have with guys that are like, wow, you know, I get off those calls and I think, and I will say, like, to make it a bit lighter, we're usually having these conversations as part of their journey where they're ready to change that, right? They're like, oh, this is the thing that made me go, no, I need to change this. Or, you know, they've already done it and we're going through their story, and, you know, so it's like encouraging in that way. And I'll get off those calls and I just think, you know, honestly, thank goodness I'm still going with this and things, because that is the reality for thousands and probably hundreds of thousands of men right now, you know, right now. And it's very isolating, and it's embarrassing to even address, to acknowledge. You know, I've got a good subscriber count and things on my channel, but it's nothing compared to the actual viewership, because there's a lot of, I call them lurkers, right? There's a lot of people watching in the background, watching in secret. It's a painful thing for them to confront, you know, and it's almost like subscribing to that, metaphorically and literally, is a painful thing for them to do, to confront that. I mean, that's how ingrained this anxiety loop can be in some of these guys. So in terms of the stories and the rock bottom moments, you know, I've heard it all. And for myself, I mean, literally, I remember like avoiding eye contact with people, specifically this woman. That was the moment when I was like, what am I doing? And never in my life, you know, I said I struggled with confidence, but never in my life did I think it would get to that point, you know, especially considering the couple of years I'd had before hair loss in China, where I would interact with everyone because I was trying to, you know, study the language and things. And it was fun to just talk to random people all the time. That was who I was. And then you know, the insecurity had escalated to me literally avoiding eye contact with people, you know, getting the weather app out for a distraction. And I was like, okay, this has literally changed the very person that I am, this insecurity. I need to do something about this. So yeah, it's very eye-opening.
It's mad, isn't it? It's mad. When I hear these sort of stories from you as well, it's like you don't, when it's yourself, it's like, oh, it must be just sort of me having all these issues. But then there's, like you say, hundreds of thousands of guys going through the same thing and still in that situation of like, I don't know what I should do. And it's like, what is that stage where they suddenly think, fuck it, I need to shave off, I need to do something? What do you think it is? At what point do they reach where they think to themselves, I've got to do something?
Yeah, I think it is a lot of, for a lot of those guys, it is those rock bottom moments. It can be, you know, it's hard because it is so psychological, but often the kind of physical appearance, you know, it does play a big factor. Sometimes there's guys that will catch themselves on security cameras, or someone will take a photo, right, in like a group setting, and they'll be like, wow, is that what I really look like? You know, and that will be the thing that kind of shocks them into taking action. For others, it's like maybe a conversation with someone where they've really wanted to do it for so long, but they've avoided that conversation, maybe with a partner or parent even, or something. And then they finally have that conversation and share how it's really impacting them, and then getting that weight off their chest. I call it like it just lets a bit of that pressure out, or it kind of exposes it in another way, not just physically, but, you know, emotionally. That gets the ball rolling of like, okay, maybe I can do this, you know, maybe I can, this is the way forward for me. But it is different for everyone. But I would say a lot of those moments are those rock bottom moments where they realize, yeah, I'm not trying to live another 5, 10 years of my life like this. I need to confront this for sure.
Yeah, nice. And would you say getting into shape then plays a pretty big role when it
Yeah,
comes to improving confidence after maybe taking that leap and shaving your head? You think that's a pretty big deal when it comes to building some like a lad's confidence back up?
yeah, massively, massively. I get so many DMs, and you know, any variation of, the gym really helps. We both know the mental and physical benefits of the gym, and yeah, I've talked about this a lot myself. It's great to get ripped, take selfies, look good in the mirror and all that. That is a boost, that we're human. We can't get away from that fact. But genuinely, the true nature, the true beauty of it is the transformation of, I always say it like this. It's like when you enter the gym, if you're new to it, or you're detrained for a long time, and you can't do certain things, right? You can't do a certain exercise, you can't do a certain weight, a certain amount of reps, whatever. And then you structure a plan together. You have the discipline to stick to the plan. All of these things are confidence boosting, because they require you to do so many things for yourself out of self-respect. And then those achievements along the way, together with having this vision of why you're even going to the gym, and then you achieve that, right? And it's just all about that self-belief, like I said, the discipline, the actions that it requires to be making those changes in the gym. All links back, I say this, to you, like really respecting yourself, admiring yourself in all that way, self-love, if we want to call it that. And that is truly confidence building. Like just put strips down simply to, if you sat on the sofa like, oh, I know I really need to go to the gym, if I want to actually hit these goals. And you have two choices, right? One of them, to not do it, which literally degrades your confidence, your self-belief, because you're not being a man of your word. Or you go and you're like, oh hell yeah, like I did it, and just that one thing, it is hugely confidence building, let alone the results, the physical changes, all of that you get as a result of it. So that's why I'm a huge fan of the gym, in building this confidence for guys. Yeah, especially afterwards, but also at any point in the journey. I think it's such a strong foundation to true self-confidence, for anyone really.
Yeah, definitely. And facial hair helps too, right?
Facial hair does help. It gives you the option. It takes a bit of the kind of focus away from the one thing, which is like, oh, I don't have hair, or how does it look? And it kind of dilutes a bit of that attention, which I think is super helpful. I don't think I've done every single beard style. In fact, yesterday I was literally going through old pictures to put a video together. And I say play around with it. You don't need that. I grew a huge, ginormous beard for ages, and that was fun. But it wasn't necessary to have a massive beard,
I'll
and I
speak
think
to you
beards come
on the
with
next
age as
episode.
well. At 20 years old, I had absolutely nothing. So I encourage young guys to not freak out about that, too much. I just think it's good to have the option there. I think that's probably what it is, really. It's like, I don't feel like I've got any options up here. So it's good to have an option down here. I went back to my old gym where I grew up, and bumped into some guy who's like, oh, you're going for the Bronson look, are you? And I was like, well, I said to him, well, yeah, I don't have many options to go for, to be honest. So this is the best one I've got at the minute. Yeah.
I've never gone for the big old moustache look before. I've just always stuck with this sort of beard, and for me it works well. I feel good like that. I was going to say, if you couldn't grow facial hair, how do you think that would have an effect on you, how you feel within yourself? Or
It's an interesting question. I think I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't have struggled in the early days if I really still had, like, we're talking zero facial hair, which I think is very rare. I think for most people that go bald, right, even if they start going bald when they're young, some facial hair is achievable, for all men, really. And I think you can look absolutely, top tier still with just a bit of stubble, as long as what you've got is you are, what am I trying to say here? Like, trimming it, you're styling it in a way that is clean, like clean cut. Because I got to admit, like I just went full caveman for a bit, and that wasn't ideal. But as long as you're kind of taking care of what you've got, I think that's the main thing. The question was, would I have struggled? I mean, it's hard to answer that, but yeah, I probably have. You know, if I'd have been a bit younger with like absolutely nothing, and I think the reason would have been I would have been struggling to focus, to pick other things to focus on, to kind of dilute that hyper focus away from the fact that I didn't have hair. And so the lesson there is, I think, is to what I obviously talk about now as well. So many different things you can focus on. You know, we talked about the gym there. You know, you've got your careers, other social activities, other things that you want to do. You know, don't just have it hyper focused on appearance, you know, because I mean, that's the very thing that kind of got you in trouble in the first place, you know. So yeah, definitely dilute some of that attention into all areas.
Yeah, nice. Good points. So let's say, I mean, I guarantee there will be guys listening to this who are going through very similar things. So yeah, clinging onto hair, unsure what to do, maybe feels insecure, wearing hats. What's the first step you'd tell them to take?
Yeah, I'd say there's the first step. You know, I to be honest, I say that usually the first step is to try your very best to take a step out of that cycle that you're in, you know, because you're not just doing these things to hide it from the world, you're also in many ways hiding it from yourself, you know. And the more detached you are from that, if you've been avoiding pictures, if you've been, you know, the hat goes on first thing in the morning, that is how you're seeing yourself, and you're probably viewing your image as what was, you know, what was once was in the past, you with great hair, and you're comparing the scary future of you having no hair to this image of the perfect, you know, perception that you had of yourself, you know, back in the day before balding. But unfortunately, that isn't the reality, you know, and the longer you hide that from yourself, the harder it is to confront, you know. And I would say just try to take a step back and view things from like a third person perspective. And I obviously got that from that moment in the street where I avoided the eye contact, and I took a step back and I was like, wow, what am I doing? And I think that truly is the first step, is to really, as painful as it is, acknowledge like what's really going on, you know, and ask yourself, how much longer do you want to truly live that way, not believing in yourself, you know, not being as confident as you deserve, being afraid, you know, because you don't need to, and you have a lot more potential than the way you're currently living if you are in the you know, the situation that you just described. So as a first step, that is probably the first step, is get in touch with the reality, as painful as it is, because in doing that, you'll then be able to figure out what the second step will be, and the third, and the fourth, and then hopefully, you know, in the right direction, sky's the limit.
Yeah, nice. Almost like acceptance, right? Which is tough, but once, like you say, once it's accepted, embraced, then yeah, it opens other doors, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sure.
The pain in the suffering, you know, a lot of that pain is in the avoidance. A lot of that pain is in the mental kind of disconnect, and just catastrophizing about that future that you think is coming away. But actually, when you face that future, it's never as scary as you kind of thought it was in the hiding phase.
What do you think about there's a massive what's the word I'm looking for? Trend, I suppose. Yeah, is it scalp micropigmentation?
SMP.
What are your thoughts on that? And is that something you've ever sort of considered yourself?
No, never considered myself. I think the best use case for SMP is guys that have maybe had hair transplants in the past that have failed, and they've shaved their head and they want to cover up the scarring. In that case, you know, just get the back done. You know, I always say the truth will set you free, right? It's like the more you deny that baldness is your reality, then there's always something. There's always a catch, you know, always. even if you go to the best SMP artist, you know, there's always a, is it looking shiny? Do I need to shave the sides down? Is someone going to notice? You know, it could look like the best SMP in the world, but it still exists. It's still a thing. And I think if you're not fully comfortable with the truth being out there, you know, then there'll always be that catch in your head that is going to play on your mind to a small degree or to a big degree. So, look, if you're going to get SMP, get it and be completely comfortable with the world knowing that that's exactly what it is. You say, I didn't like being bald, so I got this hairline tattooed on and I think it looks good, and that's what it is. That's the truth, right? The truth will set you free. Goes with any of these things. SMP, hair transplant, hair system, whatever. Don't do it to hide your baldness, okay? Do it and fully love what it is, right? A hair transplant is a hair transplant. Be comfortable with the world knowing that. A hair system, wig, whatever you want to call it, you could think it looks great, amazing. That's the reality. Be comfortable with that being the reality. And this weight of needing to keep your hair loss a secret won't weigh on you, you know? But just for me, this is the easiest path. There's no catch. It is what it is. You're not locked into routines or what ifs and buts and maybes. It's just exactly what it is. And for me, that's why, you know, it's the best solution and it's the one that I obviously recommend. So yeah, SMP hugely popular now. I don't think it's a good idea if you're going from hiding your baldness to then, you know, under a hat or fibers or with a certain hairstyle to then hiding your baldness with SMP. It's just not, you know, it's just one of the same. You're just doing the same thing. It's another safety behavior keeping you in that anxiety loop, except rather than worrying about someone taking off your hat, you're going to be worrying about your head looking shiny, right? When hair isn't shiny, or, you know, when you're 60, 70 and they're like, that is a really mad hairline for a 70.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's just I'm lucky, I guess. It's like, you know, you don't need to go through that. But listen, anyone, each to their own. I've got nothing against it per se. I'm just a massive believer in own it, whatever that is. Just own that truth, you know, because with it's just I don't like the narrative that balding and baldness, hair loss, male pattern baldness, whatever you want to call it, is this embarrassing illness that we all need to keep hidden. You know, that is the bit that I truly have an issue with. And so whatever route you take, just be comfortable with that being out there and being known, right? You don't need to be embarrassed about this and hide it away.
For sure. And it is so, you feel so free and it just feels so natural. It's like this, like you say, this is us, this is you, you know, just showing it off and accepting how we look. It's just, and I'm not gonna lie, I have thought about doing SMP before, but then the more I thought about it, it's like, it's just not real, it's fake. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yes, it might look a bit better, but I know that it's not real. So that would after a while get to me.
Yeah. But I sorry to cut you off. Just before I forget the point. So also, again, I totally get that, and a lot of people do come to me with that specific dilemma, and I always say, what is it that you feel like you're missing now that SMP would give you? You know, and I think that's the question that you really need to ask yourself. Like, what is it? Because it for a lot of guys, I don't know what your situation is, but maybe they think I'll look a bit more attractive with SMP, right? And then they think then I'll do better in the dating world or something, you know. And then what's the result of that? Right, I'm going to get into a nice relationship with someone that finds me attractive, that I find attractive. So you can usually link it back, the desire to do that, to some kind of want and need like that. Like for a lot of guys, it is dating, feeling attractive, right? And I always say, okay, well, look at what you're doing now. Like, is this insecurity that you're feeling or that lack of self-belief in your appearance now? Okay, are you really putting yourself out there to the same degree? Are you going on these dates? Are you asking this person? You know, are you operating as your true self in these situations? It's like, what other things can you do now without SMP that ultimately are going to give you the same result that you're wanting to achieve through SMP? It's like the SMP at the end of the day, for a lot of people, if they get that, all that's really changing is now they think, okay, I look better, I'm more attractive, I'm going to put myself out there, I'm going to ask more people out on dates, I'm going to show up and be confident and blah blah blah, and that's going to get me this end result. That, like I said, if you really think about it and you do the work properly, you can get there without that, you know, and not be hemmed in. And I got to argue, sometimes in many ways it's more fulfilling having done it that way, because of that journey that you've been on to like realize those things about yourself, and that self-belief, self-awareness. So yeah, it's always interesting, I think. And don't get me wrong, you know, it's like, I mean, it's a bit like taking gear, right? Taking steroids. Like, is it gonna, you know, you can get SMP done in what, like 3 sessions a month. If it fast tracks the results for you, and that's what you feel like you need, then all right, like, who am I to say that's the wrong thing? Because you're going to get the same result anyway, you know. I just think there's a real beauty in achieving that same result, kind of like you've done it, nothing but you and your self-belief, and that like love for yourself, that self-confidence, that pushing past that uncertainty, and the belief that you get in yourself through doing that. I just think there's nothing better than that. It's just like truly organic and wholesome, and that's what I live for. You know, I think that's why I'm such a champion of tackling hair loss like this, because I think achieving all the success that you want, again, based on this journey of, I keep coming back to it, but self-belief, you know, it's like, if you doubt yourself, you push past that, you achieve the result, and it's like, yes, I did it. You know, I was afraid, but I did it. And I think there's no better feeling than that. You know, it's so fulfilling. Man, I could talk about this forever, can't I?
No, I can tell. I love it. I love the passion. It's great.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. I'm really glad to have you on, because I think it's something we need to chat more about, for sure. I mean, I've never really spoken about this, really. I mean, to a few of my mates and stuff, but nothing to this level or in depth. So I think it's been really cool. So I guess, should we just finish off with, like, let's say there were guys listening who are not very confident, they're balding, they're unsure what to do. What would be your 3 best tips to help them improve their confidence?
Nice, man. 3 best tips. So we said earlier, the first thing to do is to kind of get real with it. I would say definitely pick someone. At the very worst, write it down. But tip number 1 is share it in the kind of verbal and emotional world first. If you're not comfortable exposing it physically, just be honest about, like, yeah, dude, pick someone that you could literally openly say, and you know they're not going to laugh or whatever. They're just going to listen to you. Hell, that could be me even. It's just going to hear you out when you allow yourself the opportunity to say out loud, yeah, I'm struggling with this. Like, I'm losing my hair. I'm embarrassed about it. I'm insecure about it. And this sucks, you know, and I've been hiding and I don't want to do that anymore. Get that off your chest. Tip 1, you know, and you will instantly feel relief just from doing that, you know. And I'll be like, wow, okay, now this feels a little bit less scary, right? And that's a great thing to get the ball rolling. So that would be number 1. Number 2, biggest tip, find a way to then expose it kind of in the real world and start challenging these anxious thoughts that you have in your head. What if people notice? What are they going to say? You know, because there's 2 fears, right? It's people noticing, and then it's, if they do notice, you know, they're going to react badly or negatively. Challenge that, you know, whether that's through exposing your shaved head or you're balding and, you know, whatever you've got going on, the reality. And just notice that, you know, go to a coffee shop. Nobody looks, nobody cares, you know, but you have to see it with your own eyes to really be like, oh, okay, maybe I don't need to hide this, you know. So that'd be tip number 2. And tip number 3, I've got to say it, you know, not just for the context of this podcast, but start directing proper attention into other things like fitness, right? Like the gym or whatever. It could be some other kind of physical activity, a hobby even, because in doing that, ideally as well, you'll start making progress in those areas, and it will make what you're currently doing to hide your balding like even more impractical, to the point where wanting to change that becomes way more attractive, you know. So if you think, like, you get into swimming and you're like, oh, this is such an ordeal, having to like wash out the fibers, put them back in, or having to like, I don't know, constantly stress about my hairline or thinning hair in the water, you'd be like, okay, this is going to be so much easier if I just get rid of this hair at this point. Or the hat, the common one, the hat in the gym. It's like, right, I'm on bench press. I got to switch the hat around or take it off, or I've got to be on the bench press worrying about the hat falling off mid-set. It's like those things you're like, oh, what am I doing? Like, I'm trying to smash the gym here and get progress, but this is getting in the way, and that's another thing that can carry you over the line to really tackling it and moving on. And honestly, to guys watching this, just got to have a bit of self-belief. All that fear, all that anxiety is eroding your self-belief. It's not who you are. You're not that insecurity. You're not that lack of confidence. That's just the state that the hair loss, the kind of anxiousness has got you in currently, but that isn't who you are. You just got to show yourself by facing the fear and pushing past it.
Yeah, love that. I like it also how you didn't automatically go straight into just shave it off. It's a lot more deeper than that. It's not all about that surface level. Just shave it off. Just do this. I like how you're very like, it's in depth, that psychological sort of side of things.
Yeah.
It's crucial, isn't it?
It is, because at the end of the day, you can shave it off, but still hide it under a hat, and nothing's changed. So, shaving it essentially is, when I talk about not hiding it, that is why it works, quote unquote.
Yeah, cool.
That is the bit that breaks that anxiety cycle, not just simply the physical aspect of shaving it. It's because you're no longer hiding it, and obviously, when you're walking around with a shaved head, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that guy's gone bald." If they cared to think about it. And having the world know that and see that is the bit that takes all that anxiety away, because you finally faced it.
Yeah, nice. It's the acceptance. I think for me, it was the acceptance, like I said before, accepting it, embracing it, and accepting who you are, right? Yeah, I love that. Weird question. Do you have anything you use now on your head? Like,
I have a product in the summer. Obviously, I use like SPF, and I work with a company called Bald Bro who do really good like SPF stuff. And I've got an aftershave product that I made and brought out. Yeah, bald head butter, I called it.
Plug it, yeah. I might look into that.
We'll get you some bald head butter. Yeah, BaldCafé's bald head butter. I put that on pretty much daily, especially after I've shaved it. And it's like this all natural kind of balm. Because I found that a lot of the stuff I was putting on my head after shaving it, because the shaving cream can really dry it out, and it can get a bit flaky and things. It would really sting my head, and I was like, oh, I need something that's just like all natural. I spent ages like playing around with stuff, and then landed on the formula that is bald head butter now. So I love it. Yeah.
Nice. Does that get rid of like a bit of shine or not?
I call it just it just keeps it as it is. It's not mattifying. Because again, that's another thing, I get asked about that a lot, like how to reduce the shine and things. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid.
No, you're true.
Joe Rogan shine. It's all good. I mean, obviously you don't want to be walking around like a walking disco ball, but still, I think it's another thing where we start to kind of get in our own head about it, and it's never, no one's thinking that, other than us. Even if we're getting all sweaty and whatnot, embrace it. It's all good. So it keeps it normal. That bald head butter just keeps it as it should be. Again, the truth will set you free. I always come back to that.
Love that, mate. Yeah, I'll look into that for sure. No doubt. Yeah. Oh, mate, it's been awesome to have you on. I've loved it. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and have a chat with me, mate. It's been really nice, Harry.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
Hopefully, we'll get some good traction and help guys out there in need.
Please do, man. Epic.
Keep in touch, and I'll speak to you soon, mate. All right.
Awesome. Take care, Rich. All the best.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.